Hello everyone. So our today's topic is texture. So might be you all are wondering that why I'm telling you texture. I believe that it is a very important element in fashion design, like your color, like your pattern, like etc. So texture also constitute a very important chapter or a very important topic, especially into the fashion design, because texture greatly affects the look of a garment, the feel, the lucidity, in a way influencing the appearance of a person wearing the garment. See, what is texture? Basically, texture is connected. If I am talking about in the is it related to the fabric? So texture is basically it's a touch, it's a feel of any surface. Like for example, I'm having this image over here, right? So if I'm going to tell you what is the texture of this picture of this object. So texture can be described by your own word, but if we are talking about in the term of the fabric, so we can texturize the fabric by adding some stitch details, some pin tucks, embellishment, etc. So each fabric has its individual character and charm. A wise choice of mix and design to fit the silhouette of our body can result in execute fashion. But before we evaluate the myriad charms of different types of fabric, it is necessary to understand the importance of texture. So for that, I need to share my screen first. Before sharing my screen, there are some questions arising in my mind that what is texture? I'm going to tell it right now. But before that, I want to ask something like if I said you that you need to tell me the texture of wool, what should be the first word comes into your mind? It might be loopy, it might be fuzzy, it might be furry for you. Yeah. Okay. The next question comes into my mind. Why is texture important in fashion? Like the answer is it can increase or decrease the body size. It can draw attention to a design, right? Especially if I'm talking about a fabric texture. So fabric texture also propagate the, you can say that so-called masculine and feminine idea. Like for example, velvet is a female and leather is a male, right? And texture is a very, I can say that it is a very important element of design it is, but again it is also associated with our emotions. Like for example, if I'm talking about cracks onto a wall, you can feel the emotion, like it is very scary, and texture can also associated with that nostalgia, feelings, ideas, etc. Texture is one of the sensory element, I would like to say. It is also associated with our senses. Okay, texture can not only feel, you can also hear the texture. Yes, you have heard it right. Like for example, I am having something. I'm going to make a sound and you need to identify the texture before we move further. So if I'm going to bang something, you need to identify, you can easily make it out that I'm banging something onto a steel or onto a metal, right? How? By hearing. Like I have said it before, that it is also associated with your sensory organs. So you can feel the texture, you can see the texture, as well as you can hear the texture. Now, I would like to play a sound. Just identify the sound. It's a sound of breaking glass. So, like I have said it before, that you can hear the texture also. So, just to move further, I would like to share my screen with you all to understand the texture in a deeply manner. So, texture. So, texture. Again, like the definition of a texture is a surface quality related closely to our senses of touch, feel, or sight. Like I have shown you this object. you can see there are 2 and 3. This object is a combination of 2 and 3 different texture. If you're seeing onto the top, you can feel a very fuzzy, very soft texture of the flower. But if you're looking onto the leaf, you're having a very pricky, or a spiky texture. And if you're looking at the base, you can find a very shiny texture. So all these are the different textures are present in each and every object, whether it is a fabric, it is your food, it is your any object. So I believe that texture is also a very important topic, and there are a lot of questions has to be asked related to the texture into your entrance exam or in all the way. So how can we describe texture? So there are some words which can easily describe, which will help you to describe the texture. Like for example, prickly, fuzzy, rough, smooth, itchy, loopy, shear. All these words can become under the, you can use all these to describe a texture of an object. Texture again is a very important element of your design. Like it gives or it enhance your clothing. Okay. By seeing this picture, you can notice there are different types of texture. So if I have to divide texture, so there are 2 categories of texture. One is the visual, which you can see, which you can sense by seeing. Another is the tactile texture, which you can touch, which are the real one. By touching it, you can feel it, like it's pricky, spiky, loopy, bumpy, right? Soft, like that. Vision, by seeing, you can see like it look like spikes. Don't touch it. Like when you are seeing any plant, you can't simply go and touch them now, because you can see, you can sense that if we are going to touch it, we might get hurt, right? So that is a visual texture. By vision, you can analyzing that it might be hurt, right? If you are seeing any chipped wall, surface of the wall, you can easily make out and that this wall is having a very scaly texture. So I hope the category of texture is clear to you all. Touch and vision. Now, come to the different types of texture. Like I have already explained it, that actually textures are basically divided into the 2 categories. One is the actual texture or the tactile texture, which we can touch and feel, and the another one is the visual texture, which we can, by seeing, we can identify. So again, we are going to subcategorize visual texture into the 3 subcategories. One is the simulated texture, another one is the abstract texture, and the third one is the invented texture. Now, tactile texture. Tactile texture of original material indicates the characteristics of surface of a material itself. Like by seeing this picture, you can easily identify the characteristics of the surface. Like the first picture is very cracky. So it could be a picture of any cracky wall. The second one is the bump, the loop one. The below one is the spiky one, right? So by seeing, or the scaled one, the third one is the scaly picture. So by seeing, you can also make the texture, you can also identify, you can also feel the texture. Another one is the visual. It again related to our sensation, it again related to our perception. By seeing the surface, you can identify the texture. Like if you are seeing any silk sari, if you are seeing any silk fabric, you can easily make out it's a very cool texture, it's a very soft texture in fashion design. Textures plays a very important part. Like for example, if you want to give any emotional feeling of warmth, coolness, coziness, so might be you are using, suppose for example, you need to design a category for, especially for the kids or the infant. So you are, what type of texture you are going to choose? So my answer is, you should choose all that warmth, cozy kind of a fabric, like flannel fabric, like wool, or the mixture of the wool and cotton fabric, so that it gives that warmth feeling, as well as it gives you a very furry effect, furry texture. It gives you a warmth feeling also, and it also remain give you a very cozy effect, cozy and comfort effect. Suppose if you want to give a texture of very luxurious thing, something you need to show it very in a very elaborated manner, so might be you can use silk fabric, velvet fabric. So there are different textures of all these fabrics. So visual texture are so realistic, means you can say that it is also used to create illusions of your eyes believing it into the reality. Again, there are two different subcategories of visual texture. One is simulated textures, another one is the invented texture, and the third one is the abstract texture. Simulated are not the real textures, they are the imitation of original thing. Like for example, snake skin print, animal skin print. So that comes under the simulated category of visual texture, invented intentionally by using any two-dimensional pattern or by dictation of some lines, shapes, or any 2D or 3D object. We are creating a texture. It's not actually present into the nature. Abstract texture that are not directly represent the object it is connected, but yeah, the object is translated into the textural pattern, means that comes under the abstract category. Here are the pictures or the examples. Like invented texture, like I have already said it before, invented textures, you can find the reality, you can't resemble directly into the real life. Like you can see this bear picture there, you can easily identify that it is a bear, but the texture of the skin is not the real one. So the texture simulated two different senses, sight and the touch. By seeing you can see it is a bear, by touching you can't, right? The purpose of the invented texture is to create decorated surface that evoke memories of your unsensual textures. Like by seeing this picture, you can easily recognize that it is a bear, but the skin is completely different. The texture is completely different. So the texture or the invented texture are not found in your real life. It is completely created. This image is the example of simulated texture. Simulated texture are the imitation of the real one. Like while seeing first picture, you can easily relate this picture with the cracky wall, which is chipped. The second image, this image, you can see that it could be inspiration, or the designer could inspire by seeing any spikes, or if he or she wants to give any spiky effect. So these are the simulated texture which are always taken up as an inspiration from the real life or the real texture. Third one is the example of the abstract one. Now, coming to the another thing, like what are the different factors or the different things which affects texture, especially into the fabric or especially into the fashion design. So first thing is the fiber content. Like I have already given you an example of blended fabrics, blended fiber of wool and cotton. If you are going to mix wool and cotton together, it will give you a very fuzzy look. Another factor is weaving. Suppose, for example, if you want to give any smooth feeling or a smooth feeling of a fabric, so you can mix any metallic yarn into your silk fabric. It will give you a very lustrous effect as well as a very smooth effect. Knitting. With the help of knitting, we can also create texture. Like for example, if you want to give any loopy texture, if you want to give any soft feeling texture, you can combine any silk yarn with to the knitting, or any brocade with to the knitting technique. Embroidery, again, if you want to give any 3D kind of effect, you can use French knot, you can use Boolean knots. If you want to give any bumpy or a rough effect, you can use embroidery. Another one is the printing. With the help of different types of printing, like your 3D printing, embossed printing, block printing, batik printing, you can also give different type of textures to your fabric. So all these three or four things you can, by using all these three all these technique, you can give a lot of texture into your fabric. So shall we move further? These are the examples of different types of texture. First picture, you can see it is giving a very bulky effect. The another one could be a combination of printing. The third one is the furry effect texture. Now, what are the characteristics of texture? So, like I have also said it before, that textures are also associated with our emotions. Like it could be a nostalgia, it could be feeling, it could be ideas, it could be anything. So, texture also helpful to enhance or detract from a garment, right? If you, it can also give a illusion of height. Texture can also help to give you the illusion of shape, size, as well as the look. All together, if I'm talking, the bulky texture seems to add volume to the figure. Dull finishes always absorbs light and generally makes the figure look smaller. Shiny fabrics makes the figure appear larger and reveal figure irregularities. Textures are for different body types. Like, for example, tall people always should avoid bulky and the weighty textures. Short people should pick from the short, soft, and dull textures. Those that won't draw the focus of the body but will evenly distributed to aspects as shape and contours. Stiff, crisp textures make the total body shape appear bigger because it stands away from your body. Having a very thin edge or a pointed edge can cut things easily. Crisp textures have greater surface area and cover large area. So this was a very small presentation about the texture. Apart from this, I would like to say that again, texture is very important in all the design thing. Sometimes some indirectly question could be asked regarding the texture by showing you any object. You have to identify the texture. So texture also reflects light. It absorb light as well as it's reflect light. So there are those were the important things which I believe that you should know about the texture. So I'm going to wind up this session here. If you have any doubt, if you have any queries, you can ask. And you need to more practice about the texture by seeing it, by observing it, real life texture sometimes, and you can find texture each and everywhere. Like I have said it before, you can find the texture into the food also. Like suppose for example you are eating any cake, sponge cake, so you can tell the texture of that cake. The if you're eating a white chocolate cake or black forest cake, the texture of the cake, the two pieces of the cake is divided. Like the first upper layer is a very creamy, very soft, and then lower one is having a different texture. You can easily identify texture by your sensory organs. So is into the fashion design. By closing your eyes, if you are spreading your hand onto the surface of the fabric, you can easily identify the texture. So remember all the points which I have explained it into this presentation. It will help you, it will guide you. So thank you so much for this session. Have a good day.